Very good. While we're conducting town business using remote participation via Zoom, we ask that those of you not recognized by the chair or otherwise to engage in the discussion of the moment, please mute your microphone.
Recording in progress.
That timing was perfect. Thanks, Marshall. Do we have Kevin on with us? I haven't
seen him yet.
Deb, do you know, is he on his way? Debbie, you there?
I'm here. I'm at home, so I left him, so I don't know where he is.
Okay.
There he is.
That old Galaxy S8.
Technical difficulties. The iPad just had to put it just rebooted on me, so I'm on the phone. Sorry about that, El.
No problem. So we just opened, Kevin, and we'll turn it over to you to start off our budget review. It looks like we have a long list of folks we're going to be speaking today. But we did make it a point to say we're going to stop at 5. We have a hard stop today. So if we find at about 4:45 we're running out of time, we can take a moment to take a vote on the next work session, because we do have additional time in January.
That's perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, sorry, my technology. So we made some really great gains on our last work session a week and a half ago. And the hope today is to cover as many of the remaining departments as we can. And as you said, Madam Chair, if we need to add another additional meeting, which is probably likely, we can cover some of the other departments if we don't cover them all today, as well as re-engage on some of the ones we previously spoke about. But again, today is just to cover the budget for the remaining departments. So I'm on my phone instead of on the iPad, so I have some limitations. Is Tula here today?
Don't see her.
No, I don't see her either.
I don't see her either, and she was not in the office today, Kevin.
Okay. We can touch on the assessors because it's a pretty straightforward budget this year. In essence, on the assessor's office, the only changes you'll see are the changes relative to the 2% increases for the town assessor and the assistant assessor position within the office.
Yep, it looks straightforward. Just an increase and no other ask.
If there are any questions you can think of, let me know, and we can go directly to Tula to get that answer. But again, it is very straightforward. The next department, and I do see Catherine Gabriel with us today, is the accounting department. Catherine, thanks for joining us. Did you want to just speak briefly about the department and your budget this year?
So there are not any asks over on the accountant budget. There's one item that may need to come back to at some time is fixed asset software, but probably as a reserve fund transfer if we get to that point. The auditing has gone up from not from last year, but it just has gone up in general just because we have a new auditing firm. And then we'll also be paying $2,000 for a single audit. And we're expecting that for the next 3 years as well. But there's no increases. Everything's bottom line. I didn't know if you had any questions.
No, looks good at 1.64%, Catherine. Does the board have any other or any questions for Catherine?
No.
Okay, Kevin, were you going to say something? I'm sorry.
Just to say that obviously beyond just their actual budget, the entirety of the omnibus really is and truly is the work of Catherine and her efforts with each of the departments to pull it all together, and just acknowledging that and say thank you. I want to say thank you. So thanks, Catherine.
Thank you.
So the next department would be our treasurer and collector, Jackie. I see Jackie's here. Hi, Jackie.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jackie.
Jackie.
So for the treasurer collector's budget, I really only had one increase, and this is a mandate. This is for the GASB 45, the reporting that we do every 2 years with Odyssey Advisors. So the appropriation for that is an ask of $8,100. It did increase a little bit. 2 years ago, the cost was, I believe, just under $7,700. So it did go up a little bit, but it's with the same firm. And the cycle will be for the fiscal 22/fiscal 23 valuation cycle. But other than that, there were no other increases.
Jackie, can I just ask you this particular audit, because I saw the same item come up in water. What does the audit actually cover?
So this is for the OPEB study.
OPEB?
And yeah, and it's a mandate that we need to do it every 2 years. We need to have a full study done. So this is scoped to start in July.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually missed that. You said this is because of the OPEB?
Yeah, so this is the GASB 45, the mandated reporting that we need to do. It's done through Odyssey Advisors.
I didn't realize it was only related to OPEB. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we can move on.
Well, not a lot of discussion around those kind of numbers.
No.
Jackie,
you,
thank you. I have at the end of our list of items for today that I distributed, debt service and unclassified. Those are things that Jackie worked on in preparation for the budget. So while we have Jackie on, I figured maybe we could skip to the end of our budget. I think you can find those on page 14, starting on page 14 of the version that was distributed. And Jackie, if you wanted to maybe just go through those items with the select board, and then we can answer any questions.
Yeah, of course. So for the debt service, it's broken out in the standard format as it typically is. So the first section is the principal payments, and then the following section is the interest payments for debt service. So unfortunately, as you know, those are all per the debt service schedules. That's done at the time of the borrowing. So those are fixed charges that can't be changed in any way. So there is a little bit of a reduction over last year's budget in terms of the payments for this next fiscal year. And I believe the reduction in that is $215,200.
That's very nice. It's something to pocket. Could you just, I know it's on a spreadsheet and I should know what it is, but the 2017 bond, when does that drop off? I thought it was like about a 5-year, or was it spread out in a ladder of 7 years? It's different things in it. Do you remember offhand what that is? I'm trying to figure out when the 155 or thereabouts drops off.
Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my
okay.
head, but
I thought you had it just at the top.
Oh, no, I have
Nice
it
going.
here.
I really appreciate the 215,000, but as you point out, that's all established and fixed.
Right.
We'll
Right.
take it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Jackie,
You're
could
welcome.
you just refresh my memory, the 20,000 and the 5,000 additional?
Len,
Losing you, Lynn.
Lynn, we got the same kind of.
Oh my gosh. Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. If you could just refresh my memory, the 20,000, I have to look sideways and not turn my head, for 2019, and the 5,000 for fiscal year 20. What were those two for?
The bonds go up in principal each year and the interest goes down. That's typically, in other words, we're paying off more. It's a relatively even payment, but we pay off more principal later on and less interest later on. So you see where those things went down. You're talking about 2019, yeah.
No, they're not going down. if you just look at the bond for 2020 or 2019, sorry, the fiscal year 22 appropriation was 285,000. They're asking for 20,000 more to go up to 305,000.
Yeah, so so that particular line, the projects, for the 20, and the 19 are for the
Yep.
town hall and the school roof projects.
And so why are they going up, Jackie?
So that was at the time that it was structured, so it is valid, they are going up that, I'm not sure what the advantage was at that point, it may have been, the best in terms of doing the negotiating with the borrowing, that this may have been the best structure that was available, because there's options to do it as, equal principal payments, or sometimes they'll negotiate it to do, more equal payments overall, including the interest. So I'm not sure what was decided at the time, but that's why it is going up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions on debt?
No.
Okay, is unclassified also under Jackie?
It is.
Jackie, if you could speak to that.
Sure. Just finding my page. Okay.
Sure.
So the big number under unclassified is, as everybody is aware, is typically the health insurance. At this point, we have a placeholder for that increase. We did have a meeting with our rep from Maya, and he had
excuse me a second,
suggested-
Jackie. We're getting
Okay.
some feedback from somebody. I don't know. Okay, it sounds like it stopped. Thank you.
Better. Okay, thanks. So we had a meeting with our representative, Larry Teresa from Maya. And at the time, he suggested that we put in a placeholder for an increase of 8.5%, which is, as you can see here, is a pretty significant number. We're hoping to have a real number increase, anticipating by the end of this month, hopefully sooner, but I would think in the next week or two, we should have a real number there. What Kevin and I had talked about, and we took an approach to try to build this increase based upon the actual numbers, as opposed to, I think historically, it may have been an increase that was just added to the prior year appropriation. So we both did some work on it to try to kind of determine what we have for actuals to this fiscal year, and then extrapolate what we'll have for the rest of the fiscal year, and added the increase onto that. So hopefully it's a more real number, as opposed to historically, I think there was a lot of extra money in there that was not needed.
So Jackie, are we talking about the Essex County retirement line item?
This one is for for Maya health benefit, for the health insurance.
Line 888.
Okay.
Excuse me, not.
We have Essex County retirement going up 115,000. And the Maya going up 176,000.
Yes. So I'm sorry. Yeah, I did miss the retirement that one is a real number. We did get our appropriation from the retirement board, and that number is the actual number that our appropriation for the fiscal 23. But to clarify, the Maya health insurance number is at this point a placeholder of 8.5%.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that it's good to go back and look at the retirement. Going back to 19, it was 1,000,001 roughly, and now it's 1,000,005 over about 4 years. So we're clipping at somewhere in the order of 100K a year in our retirement. Have we done any analysis to try to understand why we're going up that fast? Is it that they're not getting enough return on investment, so to speak? In other words, they're predicting 7%, but we're getting less than that. Do we know the reasons?
To give a short answer, the appropriation is determined. It's a formula that is posted on the Essex Regional's website. It's basically what we do each year is we submit a listing of the members in the Essex Regional Retirement System and the salaries of those employees. So, I mean, there's a formula that they use to determine that. And then, of course, factoring in the other communities that are part of the retirement system. It's not as straightforward of just saying, this is the increase. It's from what I gather, it's an involved calculation to determine that. Kevin did mention that there was some interest in getting additional information on the retirement calculation itself. So I am working on that to try to reach out and see if we can get, a more formal answer and maybe answer some questions a little more in depth.
That would be appreciated. I think it's helpful for us to be able to have those answers, Kevin. And again, I appreciate the fact that it's fairly complex, whatever formulas they use. But I can think of two main things: the employees that you have and the return on investment that they're getting in the funds themselves. If they were getting very high returns on investments, then they would have more in the balance, and they would have to be looking for less in the future, or vice versa. I think I saw something in our omnibus budget, and maybe Catherine can help us. I saw something to the effect of 3 to 4% as a return from the retirement. Am I right on that? There's a retirement under Unclassified. There's a little chart in columns AA through AF, and it indicates a 3.46%. I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, yes, I see. So the well, and I don't want to misspeak. Maybe Catherine can jump in, but in terms of our appropriation in comparison to the entire appropriation for the system, Topsfield's portion is 3.48%. So I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, because it looks like.
But it refers to, the next line down refers to calendar year earnings.
Yeah.
Okay. We shouldn't take time now, but if Kevin is going to get more information, that would be appreciated. I think we really should have that. Thanks.
Okay.
We should move on.
The last item, and I don't know if this is Jackie and Kevin, the employee compensation, the salary reserve fund went down $50,000. That's, a good chunk of what was in there. Any reason for that?
Into the mic, Mike. Yeah, Lynn. Thank you.
Is there any specific reason for that decrease? That's pretty significant for that account to go down from 85 to, or 75 to 50.
Yeah, so
we were to 50.
Yeah, definitely. And so we had put some monies aside because we had not completed the collective bargaining agreements in the past year. Budget cycle didn't time up, I guess, with the CBAs. And so we put, not knowing what the final agreement would look like, it's tradition to have some monies put in the account to allow us to have the flexibility to ensure that we can honor whatever increases are provided in the negotiation. This year, we were able to do 6 contracts in the last year and a half. And so we have a little bit of time before our next one comes up. So this next fiscal year, we won't be seeing CBA changes. However, there are a few different items potentially that could have impacts on that particular line item. So talking with Catherine, we wanted to make sure we still had some funds available for potential changes that could come.
Okay, maybe we could just talk offline what those are, because I know we don't have any.
I agree, Lynn. We need to know what they are. But you did say, though, that our union contracts are complete at this point?
They are.
So we know all of that. Okay. I think we need to know more about why there's 50,000 in there.
25.
50's coming out.
Whoops. Oh, 25. 50.
25 is left.
Right.
So, yeah, if we could just talk offline it and find out what that entails, just because I know we're kind of on a tight time frame here, that would be great. Okay. Anything else, Jackie?
that the calc on the administrative fee, the plan advisors, the way it's described, I'm not sure how why is the 350 there? Because of more employees that are using it, or because they've increased their fees?
So, so for the administrative fees, I did increase it $350. Their fees have not increased. However, the enrollment for employees has.
Okay. And and in the description under over guidelines, it talks about an FSA. What is an FSA, or is it an HSA?
Flexible spending account.
What is it?
Flexible spending account.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you're welcome.
And likewise, the acronym for the next one down, inpatient hospital, there's an HRA here and an HRS in the over guidelines. Which is it? Or what? Maybe they're both separate things. I don't know. And at one point I thought that perhaps this was something that was going to roll off after we put in after we changed our approach based on state law. It allowed us to do a plan design, and the plan design we tried to ease into it. And I thought that there was some monies that were put aside for the first couple of years in order to ease any unexpected health issues that somebody had, but that would roll off. This is something that will go on forever, so to speak, in our plan design, unless we change the plan design.
Yeah, so I actually I did speak with Larry Teresa at Maya regarding that, because I did look. There's actually been no activity in that line. However, it's been funded each year for $2,000, and it does stand for the health reimbursement arrangement. And the best that Larry could provide, he said it was several years back, but he didn't have a specific number of years. But he did say he was under the impression it was meant to be a temporary, as you explained it, that to kind of ease employees into the new plan design at the time. And he said, but it can be open-ended. It can stay in our budget if we so choose. But again, like I said, I did look back and historically, I don't see any expenses coming out of it.
So it may be possible then to take it out, because that's, if it's what I was thinking of. And again, you mentioned the word that temporary. I think that was part of it when we went into the plan design, to be able to ease into it if there was some unusual circumstances or whatever. It'd be great if we could put this one. We're not using it and we don't need it, to really take it out.
Can we put this on the list to touch base with you, Kevin, offline, just to get a final answer on how this one looks?
Thank you. That's all that I have.
Okay, thanks, Jack. Anyone else? Anything for Jackie?
Just the congratulations on getting the property liability down.
Yeah,
reviewed the insurance and able to bring it down by $75,000. That's nice.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Jackie. Appreciate all your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's next, Kevin?
I was going to just touch on the unclassified insurance, which was a good segue. We're budgeting off of, we've got a contract that we signed a year ago that locks our rates in for 0% increase last year and a 1.5% increase this year. However, we spoke with Maya, and Maya indicated that they still believe, based on a number of different factors from property, that we still consider to carry an increase. So the 215 you'll see is down 26%, $76,000. We are budgeting off of the actual now. It had historically been budgeted off the budget, so that number is a more realistic representation of what the actual cost will look like, plus the increase of 1.5% built into that. So that's representative of that 76 that's come down. And then the other insurances are based on recommendations from Maya on what the estimated increases may look like for accident, police, and the workman comp. So I just wanted to make sure those were spoken to. We can go to the front now.
Well, since you're still on insurance there, and I remembered one question that I did have someone.
Sure.
When we renegotiated the reserve police, we were going to save that money in insurance. Do we see that line item here?
So that I've asked Trish to she had given us an estimate that could be upwards of $10,000 annually. I've asked her to sort of break that out once we get our better estimate or actual numbers of what that'll look like, if in fact that they're going to represent the savings associated with the 66.767% insurance benefit that was that's historically been in the reserve contract that was negotiated out. So I don't have that broken out right now, Mr. Gant, only because that'll be sort of the next phase with working with Maya and the actual cost.
Okay, the 10,009 that we see there is, as you point out, reevaluations, because if I look back at the history, it was certainly less than the 89. Oh, excuse me, not last year, but the previous was less than the 89. So I assumed that the 10,000 was relatively unnecessary to go up, so to speak.
At this point in the budget process, we rely on our insurance providers to sort of give us a best guess. And then we typically want to make sure we come down. Historically, the last 2 years, the one particular item is the Maya health benefit that typically comes down from the 8.5%. And the other one, and the other one, this would be an example where we hope this one will come down once they dig into the very specific needs for Topsfield and what it looks like.
And we'll get those into the budget next omnibus version, because we'll have the numbers from Maya. Thank you.
Okay, now back up to page 4, Kevin. Conservation.
I was going to actually, if we could go to the town clerk on page 3.
Sure. Sorry, yes, I skipped.
Yep. And so just want to welcome Beth. Beth has an election this year, so she's going to be able to speak to that. And I do see she's on the phone at this very moment in time, so I will stall just for a brief second.
Little soft shoe, Kevin.
Yeah, exactly. But you'll see a number of overask on the overask guideline sheet, numbers 8, 9, and 10. All of those have a summary that's describes that those increases are directly correlated to the elections that we have this year. And so without further ado, I will welcome Beth Willis to take over.
Good afternoon. Sorry about that. It's dog season, and I'm by myself today.
Well, thanks for coming to talk about the budget. I know that we've got some impacts with the election, and we can see that it looks like $20,000 in asks over and above. About
looks that way. Yeah. So a couple things are going on. We've got the fact that we're splitting into 2 precincts. So that's going to mean we're going to net needing a couple more election workers for each election. But we were able to, it's kind of a wash because we were able to get rid of checkout, but now we have to have a separate precinct. So there we have to add a clerk. So it's kind of almost a wash, but we do net a couple extra. We're going to have 3 elections this year due to the state elections coming up. So that is really where a lot of the changes come with the elections. I also had to budget for early voting. The legislature is still trying to figure out what they're going to do, but I had to budget for what I think they're going to do. And it looks like we are going to have, it's going to be mandated to have 7 days of in-person early voting for the September primary, and then probably 14 days of early voting, in-person early voting for the November election. So that's also in with the election workers money.
Beth, what is the date of the third election?
Town election.
Right, the town election for fiscal 23. So the first election will for fiscal year will technically be the September election, the state primary. And then we'll have the November 8th election. The September primary, they're still trying to come up with a date for that. They haven't announced it. We're still waiting for the legislature to do that. And the last I heard, they've decided to do it the Tuesday after Labor Day. So that means that will be here working to set up the polls on Monday, Labor Day. So,
so then the
in addition to coming,
is the town one May of 2023?
Beautiful planning
Yes,
on their part.
2023. And that's after coming off of 7 days of required in-person early voting, which we've got a little bit of data that shows that people didn't come out and vote the last time, but the state is, going to mandate it. So we're going to have to do it. So.
You mentioned something about the wash on the precincts and the employees. Was any of that help, or have we been helped by some of the technology that we have brought in, that we can do it with fewer employees, even though we're going to, not necessarily fewer, but not as many as we otherwise would have going to the two precincts?
So the poll pads are going to be able to help us at the election with the check-in for any of the early voting processing that we have to do. And hopefully by then the state will have certified them for us to use at the elections for check-in. We've been trialing them at the last couple of elections at check-in to see how they work and getting the poll workers used to them. I figured that the elections that we just had was a good opportunity. They were smaller, those special state elections were much smaller. So we don't really see a savings with the manpower from using the iPads per se, the poll pads. Where we're seeing a reduction is the fact that the state is allowing us to get rid of checkout at the election. So we used to have, by law, we had to have 2 people at check-in. We still have to have that. At checkout, we were required to have at least 1 person. And for the sake of keeping things just logical for the voter, we always would have 2 people at checkout. So with COVID, the state let us get rid of the people at checkout. So that is gone. But now that we are going to have a new precinct, I have to have an additional set of check-in people. So that's the 2 people that, from the checkout. And then in addition, I need to have at least 1 other employee, what they call a clerk, who is there to kind of like take notes and troubleshoot during the election, because we have 2 different precincts. We can share 1 warden, but I have to have with the 2 precincts, but I have to have another clerk.
Okay. But
so usually I do.
It is something
Those 3
on state statute?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which we expect to have passed, is what you think?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Those 3 people, Beth, they're costing $9,700.
That's included in it. Yeah, that's part of that would be for the polls on election day. A lot of what you're also seeing in that ask is, like I said, the expected early voting. So
I'm trying to make kind of outline the difference between last year and this year is, because we had a primary, we had the election, and we had a town election. And we had early voting, did we?
So we did not have early voting for the special state elections. We weren't required to do it, so I did not do it. People were able to come to the counter if they wanted to vote and go through the old-fashioned absentee process. And we had a few of those, but and we managed them at the counter, but we did not do in-person early voting. Last year, we only budgeted for one election because that's all we were supposed to have. Because of the unexpected 2 elections that we had, I don't know how we've managed it. It had to do with, COVID, and I went with a bare bones staff. It looks like I'm able to absorb it in my budget this year. And, we're not going to have to ask for extra money to cover those expenses for this year. Plus we will get reimbursed for some of it from the state that, happens after that. I think Catherine can speak to that a little bit. But, so you can't, it's not really, my budget is never really apples to apples when it comes to the elections because it fluctuates year to year with the number of elections. And now, because things have changed so much because of COVID and with the early voting, we did the early voting, the in-person early voting for FY23 is going to be, I expect it to be what we had to do for 2020 for those elections. And it's getting harder for us to handle at the counter. In the early days of the in-person early voting, we handled it, absorbed it at our counter, and it meant that our office did nothing but early voting for however long the early voting period was. With COVID in 2020, for the 2020 elections, I wasn't able to do that. We couldn't have all those people coming to the building, so we moved it over to the fire station. They were very gracious to have us over there and host us. When we bring it back, if we're not even sure where we're going to be doing early voting, honestly, because of the current conditions. So I've set it up in my budget that we'll have election workers for the early voting periods. And I've budgeted for 4 people because we have the 2 precincts, and we have to set up for the 2 precincts at early voting. So I've budgeted for 4 people every day that we have to have early voting.
Beth, this is not a large dollar amount, but it appears we have the same number of days that we're having voting, the 3 elections. Did the church increase their rate? It looks like the building went up $300. So the church never charges us, but since I came into the clerk's office, it's always been a line item that we've budgeted for. They've never actually charged us, but we budget for $150 for each election for the hall rental.
I think
so. Why do we do that if they?
I think we used to budget.
Well, it looks like 150 was last year, and the year before that was 450. If the church never charges us, why do we budget for it?
Well, we don't know if they might change their minds and start to charge us. We could come to a point where we can't have the elections there anymore, and we would have to move them. And then, we may end up having to pay at some point. Right now, we don't. It's been in the budget, going back to way before my time in this office. And that's always been what it is.
I could see maybe having the 150 if it continues each year, but we're asking for more money when we haven't been paying anything.
Isn't it based on number of elections, 150 per election, right?
Right. But they don't charge anything.
But they don't.
No, I understand that part, but the increase is not because it's an increase in money; it's an increase in number of elections.
But it's the same number that we had last year.
And 3 times 0 is still 0.
No, my budget last year did not allow for 3 elections. I wasn't supposed to have 3 elections.
Yeah, because it was a special election that wasn't on the budget.
So that's why it was 150 last year.
So just to kind of frame it, so the expectation is that there's a fee associated with using the church. Historically, they have not invoiced us for that, but the traditional, my understanding is that that's what has been discussed as what the cost to use it is. So if the church had a change in management or a change of heart, it is certainly possible they could send a bill, and it's not big money, but it is representative of a real cost that we could incur for those elections. So that's why it's represented in there, to just kind of make that clarity.
Beth, could I just ask you, since the way you mentioned it, I'm not talking about the dollars here, but just for interest, how do we run the early voting? You're saying there are 2 people full-time waiting for precinct 1 to vote?
Mhm.
Or do you have...
That's what I'm planning. That's what I'm budgeting for right now. I'm not exactly sure if, once we figure out a location and once the legislature makes a decision and the rules come down, they may not require that I specify precincts at early voting, but because we're new to precincts, early voting is new. This was my best conservative estimate to figure out what we're going to need to allow people to drop in and vote all day long.
Beth, do we expect some guidance before we've finalized the budget from the state on the rules?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I feel like historically the state doesn't really care about anyone's deadlines or even their own. So.
And the bylaw codification software for 7,000?
Right. So this would be a continuation of the project. We did the general bylaws, and this would be adding the zoning to it to make it a complete package for the user, for the town. I've got an initial estimate, a rough estimate of $7,000 to do that, to start that process.
You're putting this in the budget, meaning that you know that it'll get done within a year.
So
that's rhetorical of sorts.
No, Mr. Gann, I'd like to, if I could comment on that, because that was the second part of what we were going to touch on. So initially this was put into the budget. Conversations we've had subsequently is because it should be a one-time cost to do it, is that we would look to potentially take this out of as a reoccurring cost within the operating budget and use free cash as a one-time spend to cover the costs for moving the zoning codification forward. I'd also just want to point out,
in other words, a warrant article.
Yeah, a separate warrant
Got it.
out of the version 2. I think one of my recommendation would be that this becomes just that, a warrant article, and not in the operating budget. I would also just, if you haven't had a chance, I mentioned it at a TA update about a month ago, but Beth is, as we've said, soft launched our general bylaw codification portal on our website. If you go to the clerk's page, about halfway down on the blue tabs on the left, there is the town bylaw link. If you click that, it'll take you to a landing page. If you click the link, it'll take you to the general code portal. If you go to the search at the top, you can type in any word you like that you're looking for a bylaw, and it'll actually highlight and bring up every single bylaw that has that word in it. So if you're looking for parking, you put parking in. It could reference that. If you're looking for administrator, the same thing. It's a really great tool, and that we'll be looking to replicate with the codification of the zoning. Now, just last part of that is I did have a really great conversation with the planning board chair, Martha Morrison, regarding moving the zoning bylaw and codifying it, and she indicated her support for the effort as well. So we're looking forward to be able to move this forward.
Right. Potentially as a warrant article. But secondly, for our purposes, we should understand that this is something that does not have to be done this year. The sooner it's done, the sooner we have it available. But there's not anything that's requiring it. If we have a crunch, this is, as it says, new. But could I just go back on the election piece, the $2,520 additional for election expenses, is regular charges for annual fees, etc. Again, this is additional for 3 elections versus
Right.
1 election. That's the only difference. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. Because there's one maintenance fee per year. So that's the same every year, regardless of whether we have 1 or 3 elections.
Oh,
That's a maintenance for the tabulators and the AutoMark machine.
so that's not 2,500 you already have it in your budget because you have it for 1 year. Okay. So the 2,500 though is for 2 additional elections.
Right. I'm just trying to explain to you what normally is part of election expenses. So normally every year we would have the maintenance part. And then for each election that we have, there's a fee for the memory packs that go into the tabulators and the card that goes into the AutoMark machine to be burned with the ballot information. So that's kind of where this money comes from, because that fluctuates. Plus, that also includes light refreshments for the poll workers, depending on how many elections. So it's one of those things that it's part of my budget that always goes up and down depending on how many elections we have in a given year.
Beth, in 21, did we have 3 elections?
So
Fiscal year 21?
In 21, we had 1 election. Well, it gets very confusing because fiscal years are different from. Yeah. So technically, in 21, we ended up having 3 elections, but the local election we had was included in the FY20 budget because it took in the FY21 budget. This is where I get confused because it took place. Yeah. So
thanks. I don't want to dissect it. It just looked like it was pretty much in line with 21 if we had 3 elections.
We were supposed to have 1 election last year in 21, and we ended up having the 3.
I'm just looking at the fiscal 21 appropriation. It was 7,000. What was in there? So it's not out of line with 21, fiscal year 21. Okay. Anything else, Beth, that you wanted to mention about?
Say again, Lynn?
Any other points you want to make, Beth, about this budget and the impacts of the changes in the election?
Not really. The only other thing that's different about my budget is now some maintenance agreements for software are now are in my budget when they used to come out of the selectmen budget. So that's just been a change that's still kind of new to me in the budget process. But
it was in fiscal 22, represented in fiscal 22 and carried over to this year as well. So no change from last year, but relatively new. Your point.
Change from last year, but it's in my budget as opposed to being in the select board budget.
And just a reminder, what we did last year is we took, if it was technology specific to a department, instead of putting it under town hall budget, we put it under the specific department. If it was technology used by multiple departments, we would put it under technology for town hall. So that's what that's referencing. Thanks, Beth.
And one more thing about that is we do have, I did budget for a dog program. Currently, the dog program we were using was not costing money for the last 3 years. Prior to that, we had used a dog program to track the dogs that did cost money. But I found out that starting in the next fiscal year, the free dog program I've been using, there's going to be a nominal fee. They're not quite sure what it is going to be yet. So I budgeted kind of a placeholder of $2,000. I don't think it's going to be that much money. But we had previously paid for dog programs and we hadn't had to for a couple of years. The dog program that I had been using back in 2017, they were making some changes to it and the price was going way up. And so we got out of it and because we had found this no cost solution. But this same program that I've been using the last 3 years, going on 4 years now, there will be a nominal fee.
Where is that 2,000, Beth? Is there
It's
a line?
part of the contracts and services. It's 16105-53054.
Okay. That looks like it went down.
It's yes, because it did, because of what we had to budget before for finishing off. We had one invoice that we had to budget for last year to finish off the general code, general bylaw codification. So it does look like it's going down, but that's why I wanted to point it out, so that, I just didn't want it to be, I wanted to be transparent.
It's contracts and services, Dick, the third item down after wages. It went down 2372, actually, if you look in the yellow column.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And that's for 53-108, 801. So it kind of begs the question, though, if we add the zoning to the E-code, will that go up again then?
I'm not sure. We are already paying a maintenance fee to them. I don't know if it will go up slightly. I don't think it'll be a separate maintenance fee, but that's a possibility.
The way that I understand it initially, when the codification was being rolled out, both zoning and general bylaw was part of the initial conversation. And I think it's unusual that it was done in a phased approach, where general's phase 1 and zoning phase 2. And we don't know for certain, but I generally, my understanding is that the fee is the fee for them to provide that service, whether you're doing the whole of it or part of it. So
okay.
I will verify that for certain, Mr. Gant, but that's my understanding.
It'll be good to know going into thinking about next year's budgets and things like that, to know that it's not. And the question will be asked, I'm sure, at FinCom, if you spend $7,000, how much is it going to cost us? Yeah. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Okay, any other questions for Beth? No? All right. Thank you, Beth. I know this is, you're trying to operate in a world where the rules aren't finalized yet, and you're making your best guesstimates about what it might be.
Thank you. Thank you for bearing with me on it.
Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Beth.
Who's up next, Kevin?
We have our conservation department, and we have Heidi Gaffney here to talk about her 2 lines in her budget.
So yeah, the conservation budget is blissfully simple. There's no ask, there's no increase, there's no anything in it. It's just across the board, normal.
Okay, could we ask you some questions to drag this out? Because we do like these.
Sure, you're welcome
no,
to.
I'm kidding.
We can talk about whatever.
Well, I do have a question that probably will lead to other ones too. To answer it here, the wage for senior assistant, administrative assistant, is up 1.54%, 1.5%. How is it that the grid goes up by 2%, but the amount goes up by 1.5? And I've seen that in a couple of other budgets. So it's a general question, not a conscom question, I don't think.
Yeah, I think I will defer because that's a general question.
Mr. Gant, I'll try to touch on it, and then I've got Catherine Gabriel as my backup if needed.
Time or now?
No, let's do it now. So you'll notice that on the wage earners that it's represented usually somewhere around 154 or maybe a little bit greater. On the grid, the rate of pay increased 2%, but to get to the calculation, you need to calculate the hours, and as such, Catherine did it when we started to see this happening. Catherine did a deeper dive into the different departments to say, okay, why is this happening? And it's as I understand where the fiscal year ends and how that the week lays out around that time actually represents the change in the percentage. But the reality is the actual hours they work, those hours are going to be at a 2% increase. It's just the full calculation for the entire year and the number of work days and the hours associated with it. Catherine, how did I do?
Yeah, you hit it. You hit it right on. It's the way. If you look at the pay grid, the wages did go up by the 2%, but it's based on the hours in the fiscal year. For hourly people is where you see it's more like 1.5 to 1.6. Salary people are paid 8 hours a day regardless, so you see the flat 2% there.
That's because of the shift in years and the number of days in the year.
We count the number of work days, and it's the
that's
first
the
week of the
difference.
fiscal year. Yep, the first week of the fiscal year and the last week of the fiscal year are what counterplay it.
Got it.
And
Okay,
by no
anything
Got
for Heidi? Specific to Heidi and conservation. No? All right. Well, thank you for coming to share your budget with us, Heidi.
Thank you.
Heidi.
Thank you, Heidi.
Hope it didn't take too long to put that budget together.
Okay,
So,
Kevin.
Aren't you happy there's a revolving fund to take care of the rest of it?
And that's worth noting, absolutely, that we
Yes.
have fees to pay for some of the expenditures from that department, which is great. So the next department is Inspectional Services, and Glenn's with us, our interim inspector at the moment, and former inspector. And within that department, we've been taking some hard looks at what the future for that department should and needs to look like. We've had some transition twice now at the top of the department with retirement, and then a change recently, and brought Glenn back. We've learned a lot along the way over the last 6, 7 months, 8 months around the department, the needs of the department, and how we want to move potentially forward with it. This position, the building inspector position, I'm just going to go right to the over asking ask. But the building department inspector, when the hours increased up to from 15 hours, I believe, to 30 hours, there was around 640 permits pulled that first year. We're consistently seeing much higher number of permits today, 15, 20 years later, where we're seeing, I think, last 946 permits, I believe, off the top. We did do an analysis. Glenn did a great job of pulling from the annual reports the number of permits that we've seen pulled over a long period of time to see what trends look like. But over those years too, there's been change in building code, more responsibilities put to the building department. And it's a critical department when it comes to our customer interfacing and really ensuring that we get it right with bringing somebody in who's professional, knowledgeable, personable, and be able to really do a knockout job is important, and being competitive to try to attract that. It's a very hard position to fill and to fill well because there's not a tremendous amount of people, at least not in this part of the state, that are prepared to come up as the next, I'd say, wave of people. And there's been a lot of turnover with retirements regionally. Topsfield's not alone with searching for a building inspector in the last six to 12 months. So what we looked at was a few different models Glenn and I did. We spent a lot of time together recently talking about, what's appropriate. And there was a number of different ways to get creative with the position, but where we landed for budgetary purposes is considering a 19-hour position, maintaining the 30, or asking to look at the position for 40 hours. 30 hours, 15 or 19 hours, a half-time position. You're probably going to find somebody who's doing it part-time here, part-time, maybe working in the trades or doing building inspecting in another community as well. But it's not a full-time position by doing so. 30 hours, you're benefited, which is important, and but you're 3/4 of what the pay would be for any other department head in the town. At 40 hours, you're comparable with all the other department heads with how we calculate the annual salary. And we would look at somebody who's now dedicated to the community 5 days a week here in the building, and allowing us to even expand potentially beyond what the 30 hours have typically allowed us to do. We're very, very fortunate to have Glenn on our team. He's been on the team for a while, but personally, I just want to say a big thank you to Glenn, because we have had that transition, and he has been both personally a friend of mine and professionally available and supportive of the work that we're trying to do, and ensuring that we get this right going forward. And then we have somebody that we bring in to allow us to keep doing all the things we want to do around economic development, just providing quick turnarounds to our customers, our citizens who are pulling permits. And so I've probably said a lot, probably as much as I need to for the moment, but I did want to offer the chance for Glenn to also share his perspective, because he does have a lot of institutional knowledge under his belt.
Kevin, could I before Glenn shares, just
Sure.
Currently, what do we have right now? We have a 30-hour-a-week position at what pay grade?
It's a grade 8 on the pay grade.
And it's 30 hours?
It's been historically budgeted at 30 hours, yes, for about 15 to 20 years, I believe is what Glenn and I talked about.
Yeah, it's over 20 years. I mean, when I first started for the town, it was like 15 hours a week.
So Kevin, before Glenn goes, I want to clarify something I heard. It's a 30-hour position, but you had 640 permits pulled this year, you said?
So we increased by 50%. So when the position became a 30-hour position that first year, there were 646 permits, I believe, pulled. And then in looking at the last full fiscal year, we were over 900 permits pulled, and that's been pretty consistent.
So 30 hours can't be even close to reasonable, or there's no way we could have a 30-hour-a-week employee, is there?
Glenn worked his magic when he was with us to make it happen,
Wow.
and we've learned in the last 6 months, especially, what the demands are. Getting ramped up, understanding, and just like I said before too, 30's a tough spot. It's not unusual necessarily, but it's not a half-time position where somebody has a second job to complement it, and it's not a 40-hour full-time job where they fully dedicated. 30's some people in their lifestyle, 30 absolutely potentially could work, and it's a possibility this position, even if we go out tomorrow and post the position and say we did 30 plus hours as the posting, that somebody might come in and say, who's an absolute perfect fit. And he or she says they only want to do 30 hours. And to me at this point in time, my personal opinion, the most important thing we can do is bring somebody with as much talent as we can onto the team to help us keep moving forward from a building standpoint. And that might be 30, it might be 40. I mean, someone might walk in and say, I only want 19 hours, Kevin, but we can do this, and this within that. And there's another way to do it. But
Kevin, one other question just before Glenn gives us more rationale. So what are you proposing? 40 hours at what pay grade?
Same grade. And what we would, with the 40 hours, at the 30 hours to be competitive, we've budgeted, and we did it last year. We've maxed out at the 11th step. If we go to the 40, I believe I pulled it back a couple of steps to reduce the overall number. I'm just reading the numbers right now.
I think what Lynn is trying to do is figure out, we have 69,000 in the proposed budget and 18,400 as additional requirement. So what is what? 69,000 is 30 hours, and that plus 18,000
another third
brings it 40 hours.
Yeah. So right now we have it in the budget as a grade 8, step 11. The over ask brings it to a grade 8 step. Just looking at my notes right now. Apologies. We pulled that back a couple.
The 69.
Even
The 69 is the grid position for 30 hours.
Correct.
And the 18,000 brings it up to 40 hours.
Brings it to-
right?
40 hours. Okay, Glenn, could you share your experience and why this is critical?
Sure. I'm gonna give you some numbers, but I just want to comment on what they were just talking about. When Kevin and I met with our FinCom liaison, Tim, I ran the numbers really quick at that time, and to go from 30 to 40 hours a week at the top of the pay grade, which is where I am, would be an additional $22,000 a year. All right, and at that, there's a real value to this job, whether they work 20 hours or they work 40 hours or they work 50 hours. There's a value to this job, and I think that if anybody was paying attention to what was happening last year, they can feel that sense of value to the position, that has somebody that you have to be able to attract somebody that has some experience and knows what they're doing, because it's not only the building part of it, it's the zoning part of it too. All right. And projects are a lot more complicated now than they were, 15 to 20 years ago. The houses are a lot bigger for the most part, a lot more complicated, a lot more goes into them from not only an architectural standpoint, but a plan review standpoint. So I went back and I did a budget analysis from fiscal 05 to fiscal 21. And in fiscal 05, we had a really busy year then, and we did 762 permits. We collected $119,966 on an $80,000 budget. Over those years, from fiscal 05 to fiscal 21, the fees we collected were $2,798,200. The Inspectional Services Department budget was $1,922,355. So there's a difference of 800 and so over that time period, not counting any givebacks on the obviously on the budget, money that we didn't spend during the year. We put $875,845 was the amount of money that we brought in over our budget.
No, you mean 80, not 800, right?
$875,845 over that time period. This fiscal year alone, all right, just in fiscal 22, we've already issued 484 permits. As of today, we've taken in $153,000, and we have a $159,000 budget. So we have the next 5 months that any monies that we take in will be over and above our budget.
Bottom line, Glenn, the workload is too heavy for 30 hours a week, and the level of experience and talent that we need to recruit to do the job right needs to be a higher pay level.
It's more the being able to recruit somebody that's going to be able to take care of what needs to be taken care of. Like I said, there's a value to the position. There's a value to the knowledge that somebody has to have to do, to be the building commissioner.
And I have no problem particularly, with I am totally on your side on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the two things that you said, Lynn. It's about the workload in and of itself, and it's also about what you need to put out into the world to get somebody the quality of what we need, particularly, by the way, as this town continues to turn its eyes to, downtown revitalization and the projects that'll be in, that we want to be in place around that. You're going to need somebody that is responsive and knows what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Is there anyone who doesn't feel supportive of this ask on the board?
I am totally supportive. I would like to ask Glenn a question. If we go to 40 hours, which we're proposing and I am in favor of, what are our chances of finding the kind of person we want? Are there that many people out there, Glenn, that'll take a job like this?
You're gonna be stealing somebody from another town, which is what you want to do. You want to steal somebody. You want to get somebody that has some experience.
Like we did with Kevin.
You're not going to find somebody that's never done this, that's going to jump into the position and be able to handle all of the responsibilities of it. So the only way, it may sound like a crude way to put it, but you have to steal somebody from another town. And what's going to make it so that you can steal somebody from another town is money.
You need to offer someone a position that makes them want to advance their career in Topsfield. That's Absolutely. The way I'll phrase it.
Yeah, sure. That sounds better. That's more PC.
I think Glenn and Kevin made their case, and it sounds like the board is supportive of this. So unless there's any other questions, we could probably move forward. Unless there's something else in the inspections area, Glenn, you want to touch on?
No, if anybody has any questions, they can feel free to ask. We can go through. You can go through Kevin. I'm available by phone anytime anybody wants to talk about anything to do with the Inspectional Services Department. I'd be more than happy to talk to anybody about it.
I would offer the thought, though, that we might want to steal. We might want to steal somebody from a different town, but concomitant to that is, again, could we find another small town in the general area that would share one with us? And the question is how you work out a sharing and such as that.
Kevin and I have looked at that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but Kevin and I have looked at that, and he in fact has talked to other places. I've talked to other inspectors that I know to see if I could wrangle some interest in it. And right now, there just aren't enough people out there. They're just there's any given time over the last year, there's probably 8 to 10 communities in Eastern Mass looking for building inspectors.
And if we all agree that the workload is enough for a 40-hour position, then how do you share? You're going to share somebody who's working 80 hours a week?
Well, I'm not sure that we all agree that it's 40 hours a week. The point is if you have somebody who has to come up to speed on zoning, in addition to their knowledge of code, et cetera, that you need to have the 40 hours. I'm not sure that those 40 hours, I'm not ready to agree that 40 hours. Glenn is very efficient, I know, and has been able to do things like go find some signs and still get all the other jobs done at, quote, 30 hours. So I'm not totally sure. And I don't think we said that it has to be 40 hours. If we found somebody that would do 30 hours, Kevin was saying we'd take them at 30 hours, but we can't. So I'm not ready to say we have to have 40 hours. We do have.
Okay, I mean, here's what I would say. In my time in this town, we have had terrific people in all of these positions. Glenn-like people in all of these positions. And when they get it done, despite not having enough hours, that doesn't mean that that's the right way to do it. Like we do it to Gary and Highway. Well, Gary, you got it done last year, so I'm sure you can get it done this year for the same amount of money. And I just don't know that that's sustainable over the long run.
And Dick, you said something about, being able to do it in 30 hours. No, I couldn't do it in 30 hours. 30 hours was what you were paying me for. I was a long-term employee of the town, and I did, a lot of times I went way over and above the 30 hours to get the job done and get done what the selectman or the TA wanted me to do. It doesn't mean that I worked 30 hours. That's what you paid me for.
Which is exactly my point. We've had people, Glenn, who do that kind of thing. And then we say, well, Glenn did it last year. I'm sure Glenn can do it again this year. Great. Let's move on to the next thing. And I just don't think that's sustainable. And it's not fair to the people who work for us. We say, hey, you've done a great job, so we're going to keep taking advantage of you going forward.
And it's not
bottom line, I'm sorry, Glenn, but even if it's 30 or 40, we have to pay a certain dollar level to get the talent. So we might as well get the 40 hours.
Exactly. And if it works out that they find somebody, if you budget for the 40 hours and it works out that they get somebody that would prefer a 25 or 30 hour a week position. So then you can put another person on, for 18 hours, 19 hours, and make up that difference so that the two positions come to 40. It gives you, by doing the 40, it gives you a ton of flexibility for being able to search for somebody.
And I would just, two last thoughts. And Glenn, thank you for pointing that out. But over the last 6 months, 6 months ago and more recently, I have reached out to all the surrounding towns and then some to find out where they are and if there's any opportunity to collaborate. And we've in a couple of instances bent ourselves in pretzels, try to figure it out, but it's not something that's, it just wouldn't work out. And the other thing too is the posting of this position. We do need to post this position probably next week from a timing standpoint for the timing of how long we have Glenn, and making sure we have somebody on so there isn't a lapse, and ideally a week or so of time to get that person up and running, and some mentorship from Glenn and his experience here to help that person get on the right footing when they start. So it doesn't have to be discussed right now, but I just wanted to make that point, and how we post it for the long term, right? 30 hours, 40 hours in the budget process and the timing, it's not a perfect match. So I just say that out loud for the discussion, maybe next week or before the end of this week, we can talk more about that.
Yeah, and actually that's a good segue because it's just about 10 of 5 right now. And we have about 7 more groups to go that we won't finish today. So not to jump off the plane, but we should move this into a vote to add a work session for next week, in which case we can finalize this discussion about inspectional services, all the other open questions, and have the departments come in, Kevin, who we don't get to today. So Glenn, is there anything else that you wanted to wrap up today with?
There really isn't. Just the offer is there. If anybody wants to discuss anything, if they want to pick my brain about anything that happens in the Inspectional Services Department, it's pretty slim pickings, but you're welcome to what's there. I'm available.
Thank you so much, Glenn.
And experience there.
And Glenn, thank you for all your support and help during this transitional period. It's been invaluable.
You're welcome. And the Inspectional Services Department really needs and deserves this. We do. They work, all of the people that I work with downstairs, I couldn't have turned this around in the amount of time that I turned it around if it wasn't for Sue Winslow and Heidi and Wendy and Catherine, the admin. I couldn't have done it. No way I could have done it. So, a big shout out to them because they absolutely instrumental in fixing what was wrong. So
thank you.
I have to go because I have to take my wife to an appointment. So
okay. All right. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'll be talking to you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Glenn.
Could we move then, just to segue, to have a motion to add a work session next week? Does next Thursday work for people? Trying to remember which days. No, not Thursday. Wednesday, right? Because Marshall's.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say Thursdays. I'm going to have the same problem. So
the 26th.
Let me look here.
Would it be the same time, 3:30?
Whatever works for people. I mean, we can make it any time that works.
I have no conflicts next Wednesday. Yeah, I have no conflicts next Wednesday. So
you have no conflicts? Okay.
I mean, other than working my normal, job.
Yeah. Other than that.
So you're saying you can work beyond 5 o'clock, so to speak.
Yeah, I could be on at 5 o'clock. If you want me to do it from my car, I could be on at 3:30. You can, pick the time. It's fine.
Any preference for a time? Because it looks like it's kind of unended. We have an open ending, so we can get everything wrapped up.
Yeah, the 3:30. You're talking about Wednesday the 26th, right?
Town hall.
Yeah.
If we can make it earlier than later, actually Zoom is different than it used to be.
I can do 3:30 on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Okay, how does that work, Boyd?
I can do 3:30 on Wednesday.
So can I.
All right,
So can I.
sound good? All right.
Boyd, you can fit it into your schedule?
Well, with difficulty.
All right, so
advance notice.
we will let this one ride so that we can finish off all the work that we need to do. We have no no stop time on this one, it appears. So could I get a motion to add a work session on January 26th at 3:30 p.m.?
Motion to schedule a select board meeting on January 26th at 3:30 p.m. as a work session.
And Boyd, you seconded it? Okay. Roll call, Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Mr. Hook,
Aye.
Mr. Gant,
Aye.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
and Ms. Bermudez is aye. So it passes.
Are we saying an hour and a half also? Is that the,
It may go longer. Is that a problem, Cam? Is there a stop time? for you?
5:30, 5:40, I could probably go till.
Okay, so let's make sure we do it by 5:30.
Or is it better to try to do it at 3?
I can do that.
Can you guys do it that early?
I mean, unless I'm in the middle of breaking news, I can probably escape a little bit early.
Okay.
So, everything in my life is pending breaking news. So that is not something we should worry about too much.
I'd
Okay,
like to
can
amend
we
my
adjust?
motion to 3 p.m. on that date.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, Mr. Jackson,
Aye.
Mr. Hook,
Aye.
Mr. Gant,
Aye.
Mr. Brown,
Yep.
and Mr.
Aye,
Moses.
thanks.
Aye. Okay, so that's 2.5 hours. Kevin, do we feel confident we can get things wrapped up in 2.5 hours?
We'll do my darnest. Yes, absolutely.
Great.
We're gonna shoot for an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah, because we only have 7 groups, and actually we could probably get another group in tonight. So it's really anything with Inspectional Services and the open questions from before added to those.
If we can get more COMSCOM style budgets, we could knock those out in about 3 minutes.
It's segue, Mr. Hook. We have the health department with us here today. Is it okay to bring them on, Madam Chair?
Sure. Yep, that's fine.
We have Mr. Mark Rizza, and we also have our health director.
Can I just ask Kevin, can they do it in 7 minutes? Because we have a hard stop. If they can't, is there someone else you'd like to go instead?
There's no, I don't believe there's any above guideline ask in their budget. So if there's.
And if it's 10 minutes, I'm fine. So just speaking for me. So
let them go.
Okay, sounds good. Welcome, Wendy.
Hi, thank you for.
Who else is there? Sorry. Oh, Mark.
We also
Welcome,
have Mark Rizza, who's a member of our board. So we do not have any asks above our budget, which is good. We did, hopefully you got the information, have information about the flu vaccine and reimbursement, which you would ask for us to present to you when we got it last year. You would ask for this. So that's what we have if you had any questions about that. Otherwise, that's kind of it for us.
Any questions?
The only point I'll make is there's $500 represented in the dead animal pickup disposal. That is being moved from highway, which was represented as a negative there, 500, and then a positive under the Board of Health as we're consolidating that into that one department.
I can't believe we're going to get away without any discussion about dead animals. That's it. $500.
It is tempting.
That's normally a big deal.
Okay. Any other questions on the information that the health department presented? No. Oh my
God. That was 5 minutes to spare.
Fantastic.
Let's do another.
I'd just like to say, I think we ought to be proud of Wendy for the job she does and thank Mark Rizza for being involved. It's important to us that there are people that are willing to work on these committees.
Thank you so much. And thank you for coming in at 1.75%.
We've got 2 departments. I'm sure we can probably at least do one of the 2. And well, we have 3 with RAC, but that we can table that for the next meeting, Stephanie. The Council on Aging is here, but they also do not have any changes on their budget. And then the library, they have a couple of changes that they can reference if we are able to get there tonight. So Kathleen?
Hi.
Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you. Yeah, I have no ask, no increases. I shifted some monies from one, category to another. Other than that, the normal wage increase, salary increase. Other than that, no changes.
Excellent. Any questions for Kathleen?
What is this? I'm sorry. No, I don't. I had some.
I would just like to say to Kathleen, this is her first budget with us. She's been here a full year, but this is the first time kind of getting into this. And just want to thank her, the COA board, for the work they do. It's been a really big challenge this year for that department, health as well, when we're pivoting off of them. But COA, some of our most vulnerable during the pandemic, were members of our COA. And Kathleen, Penny, and a number of other people, volunteers, really stepped up to support the efforts of the Board of Health and our public safety team in reaching the seniors this year. And not only did she build trust and help support, and ultimately, I do believe, save lives with the efforts that they made, but they also have really built up a lot of favorable reviews from our senior community on the programming under these circumstances that they've been able to put forward. So I just want to say, thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, Penny, if you're on the call. I don't know, but and yourself, Madam Chair. I know you're a member of the board as well, and have been right there on the doorstep of all of this. So thank you.
Yeah, just a note too that Kathleen's organization, her COA, has been able to continue with Board of Health guidance in-person events, which I'm not sure how many COAs, Kathleen, have been able to do that through the pandemic. That's been fantastic.
Kathleen, you and your team do a great job, because I continue to hear reports about the COA and the wonderful job that they do for the people that really need that kind of service. Great job. Thank you.
A quick question on the postage and mailing. It has been down, and that is because we're using more online distribution of the scoop or something of that nature?
No, it's because we went to twice a month. Every newsletter is twice a month. Excuse me. There's 2 months in one newsletter.
Every other month, yeah.
Every other month, opposed to every month. And they never shifted that budget for that. So I thought I could use those funds elsewhere. There was nothing on transportation. And my outreach person, Beth, does go to different homes to check on people. And we had nothing in the travel expense, so she does get expenses.
And on the software, this was the ability to track people when they come in or something. Are we getting our value out of it? There was a big discussion when it was originally implemented, whether it was really going to be worth it for what value. But any comments you have?
It's invaluable. Honestly, just being able to go back, not only is it great for tracking and for my state reporting, it wasn't kept up because of COVID, so we have to input a lot of things that weren't put in there. But going forward, all I'll have to do at the end of the year for my state reporting is send that report to them directly. But also it tracks any vulnerable seniors that we may have. We're able to keep notes on there. So if we have a problem, we're able to look back to see, if that's been a continuous problem or what we've done in the past, and little notes that may help us out.
I think one of the things was to reduce the amount of labor that was necessary to mark these things off and count them up. So hopefully, I know we didn't reduce the number of people, but hopefully they're able to do more things based on doing this. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kathleen, so much.
Thank you.
So Kevin, we are at 5 p.m. I don't know if there's another quick, like Kathleen and Board of Health.
Yeah.
I know that the library has a couple of asks, so that may take a little more time.
Yeah, it's the library is based on Mars, and I don't know do we have maybe 3 minutes? I think we might be able to cover it. If does that work for everyone?
Marshall's shaking his head, so yes. He was the one with the hard stop. So
I'll give you a total of 5.
Take it. So I have Laura, our library director, here tonight, and I think I also saw Kathy Hartman as well, representing the board. Just a real high level, and then I'll hand it over. We have had some turnover, and we will be having additional turnover in about a week's time. So it's kind of important we hit the library now. So ultimately the library is governed uniquely than other departments in that there's a percentage requirement on their budget to increase year over year. And there's a waiver process associated with that, which this year we did ask for, but we're unsuccessful. So there is a requirement that our budget increases. We had some people cost, personnel change that is going to reduce our costs on those line items. And the net effect is we need to take those dollars and then put that somewhere else. And it, based on the needs of the library and based on how annually we have the fire alarm system or security cameras, or in this case, a water fountain that's going to be needed, or a report for the basement and the condition of that, we felt that taking those monies and the necessary increase needed annually and putting it in unforeseen maintenance was a good place to be able to do that, so that we can use right out of the operating budget the monies that we typically talk most about annually when we talk about budget for the library anyway. So those were just the thought process around the over ask. The over ask represent right up to the number of the statutory by the state for a year over year increase. And before I lose the chance to say this, because I only have 3 minutes left, I did just want to say thank you, Laura, for all your service to this community. And personally, the last 2 years as a friend, I've really trusted you, believed in you, and the work you do at the library is so impactful to this community. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. The percentage of people that have a library card in Topsfield is over, I think, over 92%. And that is just an astronomical number, and just shows how supported the library is and how needed the library is in this community. But beyond that, all the services that they're giving, because it's not just, you don't get those numbers by just saying we have a library. You do it by offering services people want and delivering on those services. And Laura's been doing that for a number of years. And the library commissioners have supported that and helped guide them through those decisions and those efforts. And a big thank you on behalf of myself personally, but on behalf of the community and the team here at Town Hall. Laura, it's good. We're going to miss you a lot.
Thank you. You're too kind.
We will miss you greatly.
There will be an event for Laura in the spring, let's say.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
So, do we have time to keep going here?
Well, just on the library, Dick, because we're coming up.
So, I think it would be helpful to get a quick review of what the MAR is and where we are with the MAR. The MAR, amongst other things, is averaged over a 3-year period, that sort of thing.
Yes.
I think it'll help for Cam and Marshall to get up to speed on what are the details of it.
So I asked Debbie to post it on the board docs, what the Mass General Law is and how it's calculated. So it's the average of the past 3 years times 2.5%, and that's the municipal appropriation requirement. And so if you don't, that's part of being certified as a library. If you are below the MAR, then you have to go to the Mass Board of Library Commissioners to ask for a waiver, which is done in January. So it would be next January. So what would happen is either the commissioners would grant you, they're looking to make sure that the library was equitably handled within the town. So they look at the whole town budget. So town representation has to go either in person or by Zoom to that meeting. What's at stake is our state aid, which is this year was about $14,000 to the library, and reciprocity, which is the bigger issue. If we are not certified, most towns will not lend to us.
So that's kind of the big stick of the municipal appropriation requirement.
Mm-hmm.
So based on Kevin's advice, what I did was put in unanticipated maintenance and repairs, monies for a landscape plan, because the trust commissioners had indicated to the library board that they would not pay for a landscape design plan, but they would pay for any landscaping that we wanted to have done. So they just take care of the execution, but not the planning. And also, I requested a replacement of our water fountains. We have 2 at the library. They don't have the bottle refillers. They're in the days of COVID, they're not exactly the most sanitary things as well. So that was for $11,200 increase on that line item. I also asked for $312 in the library computer expenses and $464 in network administration, which is covering a contractual agreement.
Any questions for Laura on what you just described?
Pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah, it's pretty clear that those contractual things go up each year that we need to have as basic parts of the library, such as network services. The frustration is that we have certainly an opportunity to tighten on the budget easily. We put in special lighting based on use. I think we got some help from maybe the trustees to
the trust commissioners paid for that.
Save us on the electric. Our electric has been down because we did do some of that before. So, at a minimum, it would seem very easy to take $5,000 out of the electricity. We spent money to get there, so we'd get a return. The frustration is that we have this thing called MAR, which is affecting us, apparently. So I didn't realize that you had sent those MAR things into board docs. They weren't there the last time I had checked board docs, but I'll go through them. Does it include where we are, a document that shows what our position has been for the last few years?
We've been certified since I've been here.
Documentation is in there. Thank you. I'll check it after the meeting. I'm sorry I didn't see it before the meeting. But it is very frustrating because we should be able to save it. So the question,
Dick, could
creative solutions for how we can take advantage of things.
Dick, could I just interrupt you here? This was kind of a perfect storm year because of my retirement, Wendy Thatcher's retirement, long-term Christine Manning also left the library. So the salaries usually carried the library and helped us make the MAR. This year it didn't. But in the future, as we go forward, hopefully there'll be increases in wages of at least 2%. So this year is next year is kind of a perfect storm event at the library.
So Kevin, is there a way that we could do something like unusual? And I want to be careful, Catherine may hit me over the head here, by taking some things that would otherwise be a warrant article, so to speak, and put it in the operating budget under other for this year to get up to where we should get, and not spend it as a separate warrant article or free cash at all, but put it in the budget, knowing that it's a one-time only.
That's what we've done.
Do it, and then we can make something like electricity a little bit more reasonable as to what it is, or any number of things in here more reasonable.
If you could let Kevin jump in, if you don't mind, just because we're at 5:10 already. Give it your answer.
The water fountain is the prime example of that. That was initially looking at free cash, but then when we allocated the funds into the maintenance, that is earmarked to be spent out of the operating, the raise and appropriate money for the water fountain, rather than using free cash, because that we have to hit that MAR. So that was what that represents. So yes, the answer is we absolutely looked at that, and that we are doing that.
So that maybe I should do it one-on-one with you after, because
Dick, we're past the 5 o'clock.
It seems like there's maybe some creative things that we may be able to do here for this coming year with agreement from everybody as to why we're doing it. Okay.
Laura, I'd like to add my own thanks for the tremendous job that you've done. The library is a hub of the town. You have so many interesting programs that you offer and that you interact with so many other groups. Thank you so much for all your years of making the library what it is.
Thank you. I'm going to miss it.
We'll miss you.
And a lot of other towns use it too. They appreciate how good it is.
That's true. All right. If we could have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We could charge Boxford.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And we'll do roll call. Mr. Jackson?
Aye.
Mr. Hook?
Aye.
Mr. Gant?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
And Ms. Bermudez is aye, so it passes unanimously. Thanks, Kevin. We'll touch base